Hello everyone, it's Menenberg. We've done a lot of LEQ stuff together and we're going to do a little bit more. As the year progresses, I'm probably going to give you more student samples and work through some other prompts as the content continues. For now, what I'd like to do is continue our journey through the LEQ rubric. If you've watched previous videos, you know that I've gone point by point on that LEQ rubric and giving you kind of a better understanding, hopefully, of what it looks like to actually write for those points. Now, if you have the LEQ rubric from the College Board, it might be helpful to have it out. I'm going to have some of the language put up here on the screen. Hopefully you can read it. I don't know how literate you are. We'll see. It says this: to get analysis and reasoning point number 2, also known as the complexity point, you need to demonstrate a complex understanding of the historical development that is the focus of the prompt, using evidence to corroborate, qualify, or modify an argument that addresses the prompt. Okay, again, I'm not really sure why the College Board thinks we got to write so fancy for our rubric in words that we don't always understand, certainly in language we don't use regularly as humans. However, luckily you have a teacher, or maybe you have another teacher, or maybe you're just really intelligent and understand what these words mean. I'm going to try to interpret them for you and tell you what it looks like. So, you've argued your case, you've got a thesis, you've got evidence, you've got all that stuff. Great, now let's go for the unicorn point, the complexity point, this point. Let's try for it. There are 5 different ways given on that rubric that you can do it to get this. Here they are. I'm going to suggest you do it in 2. First, explaining nuance, and the ... the ellipsis just says there's more language there, so go ahead and, again, refer to the rubric to see what that language is. All I'm going to say about nuance: I've read scoring samples and scoring notes from the College Board readers on various student sample work that got this point, and when they got it for that, it looked like they gave a bunch of evidence, and they tied that evidence back to their thesis. There's a limited amount of evidence you have to provide to get the evidence points, but if you give more and more and more, it's nuanced. It gets into the nitty-gritty, the varying degrees to which stuff relates to your thesis. So if you show them really, really well what you know, you just might get the complexity point this way. Now again, if you're good at this, if you've practiced your LEQ writing, the chances of you getting this more than one way, I recommend trying at least 2, is higher. If you just swing for the fences one time and take a Hail Mary, if you will, it may happen, but it may not, okay? I'm trying to tell you that this is possible. What I also want to mention before I continue is that while this point is arguably the hardest point to get, it is okay if you don't get it, okay? Not only do I think you're capable of it and you should try, but if it doesn't go your way this particular day on the test or when you're taking this LEQ, whatever it is, don't lose hope, okay? It's 1 point. If you got a 5 out of 6 on the LEQ, the same point applies on the DBQ, by the way, and if you got a 6 out of 7 on the DBQ, you are so much better off than most of the country, okay, who's taking this test. The average LEQ score is somewhere between a 1 and a 2 out of 6. So if you got every point except this one, you're doing okay. Not only that, but when you get your score, they're not going to tell you, oh, by the way, you got all the points on the LEQ except. They're not going to tell you that. They're just going to give you a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 on the overall test, which is unfortunate. But my point is, do not agonize or stress out over this 1 point. I'm not saying don't attempt it. I'm going to explain that you should attempt it multiple ways, right? 2 ways at least, and you should be able to get it. But if you don't, or it's not happening up here the day of the test, let it go. Let it go. Sing the song while you let it go. I don't like that song. Let's move on. Okay, next. You can also get this point by explaining both a similarity and a difference, continuity and a change, cause and effect. Now, this is nice because in years past, this was not a way to get it. In fact, you usually had to do both of those things with what the prompt asked. The prompt would say, give me a similarity and a difference. Now it's a little bit more broad, and it's like, give me a similarity. Well, if you give a similarity, the chances are you probably know a difference too, so throw it in there. And as long as you intelligently tie it back to your argument, your thesis, you can get the complexity point, my friends. Now, it's worth pausing for a minute and again, going back to the wording here, not on the screen, but on the actual rubric, and look at that it includes and necessitates more than just a quick reference or a phrase. You can't just throw in a sentence and hope to get the complexity point. I recommend making it its own paragraph. There are other great AP teachers who say you don't need to do that, you can sprinkle it throughout. Yes, you can. The reason I suggest making it its own paragraph, however, is because that tells you and you alone, this is what I'm doing here. And it is a focused attempt at complexity. Okay? They're not grading you for structure, really. Remember that. It's not on the rubric. Okay? So if you put it in a separate paragraph or you sprinkle in throughout, they're not going to grade you up or down based on that. But by separating it out, you are making it a little bit more standout-ish, if you will. So that's a word of advice. Not like you have to, but just a suggestion. So by doing this, similarity and difference, continuity and change, cause and effect, that's a really good way to get it. Again, because the chances are you kind of can fill in those blanks as you go. I suggest you do this naturally, regardless of what the prompt is, particularly for a comparison prompt. If you have two things or people or places that you're talking about, you are inherently comparing similarities and differences. You just have to spell it out a little bit for the reader and you'll probably get that complexity point. Okay, next way, explaining connections within within and across time periods. Okay, I think this is a pretty easy way to do it, but here's what I've seen many times when students attempt this. They always go back to the Mongols for some reason. This thing, my argument, is just like the Mongols, and then they say something that the Mongols did, or whoever. Okay, that is not what we're looking for here. Again, the goal of this point is to extend your argument to something else or expand it to something else. In this case, a connection across a different time period. Most likely that time period is going to be immediately preceding or after the time period of the prompt. And so it's much easier to stay with the same, let's just talk about China, for example. If we're talking about Ming China, and you're talking about something that happened in Qing China right afterward, it's going to be a lot easier than being like, oh yeah, let's talk about the Ming here, and then we'll jump back 2,000 years to the Shang. I mean, come on, guys. There might be something that connects those things across time periods, but that's not as easy as connecting, one from the one that came right after it. Okay, let's stay within a close proximity and you're going to be in a much better situation. Okay, you also can do it across geographical regions as far as I remember, and that is also a nice way to do it, but again, it has to go beyond a simple comparison. This is like this. What about your argument is demonstrated here in this place or in this time? If it's not immediately clear, then you're just throwing in some extra evidence. You're not going to get that complexity point. Too often I see students attempt this method and just give a really, really brief blurb about something, and that's not good enough. Okay, you got to go bigger than that. You got to go deeper than that. And you've studied, you've done the work, you should have that knowledge somewhere in your brain. But again, worst case scenario, you don't get this point. It's okay. That's not the word. That's not the. If there was one point I would sacrifice on the altar of the AP exam, it would be this one on the LEQ, okay? I can live without getting that point. I would be really upset with myself if I didn't get the thesis point though, okay? So focus more time and effort and energy on the thesis than you do on this, okay? You know what I'm saying? All right, way number 4, corroborating across themes. As I've said in previous videos, the themes are very important. The College Board gives you 6 themes so that they want you to organize all the historical content and help you understand them across those themes throughout time. It's a really helpful way to think about history. But too often, we just push those aside and don't even think about it. I have videos about the themes. Watch those videos, learn about them, memorize them. They're in the College Board's unit outlines. Your teacher should be telling you about them. But if you connect the theme of politics, for example, if that's the theme that your prompt is operating in, and extend that to the social implications, for example, that is a great way to extend your argument across themes and get the complexity point. It's not that hard because inherently many of these themes have overlap. So the prompt may be focused on one, maybe two themes, and you talk about that extensively within your essay. Great. Let's see if there's some overlap with another one. It's not hard to imagine that these policies of this government would have social implications or economic implications, or perhaps they would affect the humans in their interaction with the environment. It's just the way we look at the world, and we just got to put that down on paper. It's not that hard, people. You just got to give evidence, and again, what you're doing is you're extending your argument. You got to integrate that within that theme. You can't just be like, oh yeah, this also affected women's rights, and leave it at that. Tell us more. Tell us how that is a reflection or an extension of your argument, and give some specific details. That's why I suggest doing an entire paragraph. 2-3 sentences is probably where you're going to need to land, and then you'll be all right. Okay? Remember, Menenberg aims high. You might be able to get away with less. I'm suggesting you aim high and hope that you didn't miss very much. Okay? So you'll get that point. Lastly, qualifying by considering alternative views. Okay, to put this in more simple terms, that's like a counter argument, okay? Remember, your thesis that we focused on so much is arguable. That means that somebody with half a brain could disagree with you, okay? So for this, all you gotta do is explain why somebody would disagree with you. What is their evidence? What is their case for the other side of that argument? That's all you're doing. Most of you have taken an English language arts class, and you have to do that for an argumentative essay. And so this shouldn't be really, really hard, but a good solid paragraph doing that is a really easy way, or it should be an easy way, rather I should say, it's a doable way to get that complexity point. That's the fifth way. And as I've said many times, you should try at least two. The first one I would try is number 2. By doing that naturally within the structure of your essay, not necessarily separating it out into a separate one, you should be able to get that point. And then at the end, I'd throw in another attempt. I'd likely probably do the counter argument. That's just me. You might have another strength, okay? But you're not going to really want to attempt number 4 unless you're really familiar with those AP themes. You're not going to really want to talk about number 3 unless you have a strong understanding of this group of people in this other time period. You gotta have a lot of content knowledge for that one and for number 1. So really plan ahead, think about it, and as I've said in previous videos, when you see that prompt, you might do a pre-write. You should do a pre-write. Spend 3 to 5 minutes outlining that essay and include possible complexity. Okay? The more you plan, the more likely it is you're going to actually get this point and the other points. And so I'm going to leave it here, but if you have questions, please put them in the comments or send me an email. I'm happy to help going forward. And remember, life's about choices, my friends. You can do this. We'll see you next time.